Come on, Ricky, there's a good girl. Come on. Good girl. Stop. Come on, Ricky. Good girl. Come on. Hello and welcome to Podpadstudios. I'm Mrs. Breaker and this is our third episode of the Dalek Obsession series. This one is all about how to make Dalek move and, more importantly, what's under a Dalek's skirt.
Right, okay then, so you want to make a Dalek move. Now, there are a number of different ways to make a Dalek move, but the majority of people that build Daleks use mobility scooters or wheelchair motors. Now, basically, you can pick them up anywhere. So old powered wheelchairs, pick them up on eBay, Amazon. You can get them for virtually next to nothing. But another good source is actually go to some mobility scooter shops, talk to the people there, and they've usually got old bits and pieces lying around that they can't use or that they can't sell. So you can get some really, really good deals. Now, a lot of people, if they want to drive around in the Dalek, so they want to be inside it, simply take an old powered wheelchair or mobility scooter and build a Dalek around it. And really, to be honest, that's actually one of the best ways of doing it. So, you know, because you've got the frame, you've got the motors, you've got everything you need. But what I'm going to do now is going to go through the basics of what you actually need to make a Dalek move. Now, the first thing we obviously need is the motor. Now, we got these. Now, from these motors, you're never going to get Formula One Formula One Grand Prix car speeds. Your Dalek is not going to travel at 150 miles an hour, and you don't particularly want it to, actually. These motors they're big, they're heavy, they're designed to produce a lot of power, but they don't go very fast. 8 miles an hour, 9 miles an hour tops. The way it works is that in here, this is the motor bit, and then this bit is a gearbox. And the gearbox reduces the power from the motor down, so it gives you lots of torque. And torque is really what you need in a Dalek, because you're either kind of propelling a heavy model, or you're propelling an object with a person inside. So basically exactly what you did with a mobility scooter. And then with the motor, as I said, you've got the motor, you've got the gearbox, you've then got the wheel. Now the wheels are usually solid rubber hoops, which makes them really, really strong. Or you can get inflatable ones, but again, they're very, very strong and they're very, very heavy. But again, it's what you need to support the weight of a person sitting inside a Dalek. They've got this kind of keyhole affair which engages on the motor. So when it pops on, that kind of just goes in there and engages on there, and then the motor can sort of turn the wheel. Now, you will need to mount your motor. You see here the mounting points. You'll need mount your motor to a frame. Don't use wood. It's got to be a metal frame, because these motors will just tear a wooden frame apart. Hence why I said take the old wheelchair base or mobility scooter base, leave all this attached to it, and then you won't need to make a frame. It would be, it would be really, really good. Now, what you can't do is you can't just apply power to this motor. If we put 12 volts or 24 volts straight into this motor, it would start at full speed and take the power off. It would stop at full speed, and that wouldn't be too good in trying to control a Dalek. Even at 8 miles an hour, it would be quite funny actually. But so don't put power straight into your motors. What you need is a speed controller. Now, a speed controller is one of these gadgets here. Now, this is what kind of you'll get with your mobility scooter or powered wheelchair, and all it does is control the speed. It does exactly what it says it does, and it will take the motor, so the motors connect into the speed controller. You see there's wires there, they just connect together. This takes your motor from 0 miles an hour right the way through to your maximum speed, which might be 8 or 9 miles an hour. It will also allow you to reverse the direction of your motors, allow your motors to turn, and of course you're connecting two motors together and it controls them together. That in turn has plugged into it one of these. And this is the interface. So basically, when everything is powered up, you push forward on the joystick, the motors rotate forwards, it pushes the wheels forwards, and the Dalek goes forwards, backwards, left, right. You've got control. This might be mounted inside the Dalek, kind of next to where you're sitting. So when you, as I said, move this around, you are moving around the Dalek. And really, on a mobility scooter, this is kind of what you get. Obviously, we're just showing two wheels here. You've got your two front wheels on your Dalek, which are kind of probably like casters or toggle wheels, because they're not powered. It's only these two wheels that are connected to the motor that are powered. And you don't have steering like you do in a car. So power is applied to one motor and reversed on the other motor, which causes the Dalek to turn. And this is all done within the speed controller, so you don't need to worry about that. You just simply connect everything up, connect power, and power obviously comes through the big chunky lead here. We can run a 12-volt battery on it. We could run 24 volts. Most powered wheelchairs are 24 volts, but you can run it at 12 volts. It just means it goes slower. You can even, if this can deal with it, run it at 36 volts, which means, again, you're not hitting Formula 1 speeds, but you are going to get a little bit more speed out of your Dalek. So if you didn't want to sit inside your Dalek, and you didn't want to be controlling your Dalek sat inside doing the joystick control, you wanted to have your Dalek so it was radio controlled, so you could walk behind the Dalek and control it. That's what we do with Victoria. She's radio controlled. You couldn't sit inside her because you couldn't fit a person inside her. There's too much stuff. You basically don't need this. You don't need this, and you don't need this. You don't need these control unit from the wheelchair. So we're going to move that to one side. You still need the motors, and you still need the wheels. But what you will need is a different kind of speed controller. Now, basically, these two, in essence, are exactly the same. They're the same thing. Now, this is quite a small speed controller, probably not powerful enough to power these, but I'm just using this as an example. So with this one, what we do here, we've got two wires coming off here. So this connects to your battery. Our motors, motor left, motor right, connects into your speed controller. So we've got our motors going in, we've got our batteries going in. Now, to control this, we don't have a joystick going in. What we have is a radio-controlled receiver. That plugs into the electronic speed control. Now with this radio control receiver, we can use a radio controlled transmitter. We can then control our whole system from our transmitter. So when we move the dial on here or move the trigger, however we decide to control it, this sends a signal from here to our receiver, which is connected to our speed controller, which in turn, of course, is connected to our battery and our motors. It controls our motors, forwards, backwards, left, right, in exactly the same way that this did inside the Dalek, except now we're not inside the Dalek, we're actually controlling it at a distance from behind or wherever we want. And this would give you a radio control system. So you can see, obviously we haven't included the batteries here. The batteries are a significant object inside a Dalek, because obviously you need nice big batteries. It gives it extra weight, makes it stable, but also you need bigger batteries to power these. You're not going to power a motor like this from these kind of batteries. It's just not going to happen. You can power your radio receivers and small objects, but to power these big motors you need bigger batteries. And that is why mobility scooters and powered wheelchairs are heavy, because they've got big heavy batteries in them and they've got big heavy motors in them. But in essence, that is what you need to power a Dalek, either by being inside it or with radio control. Now, a little word about motors. I suggest that you just get your powered wheelchair, your powered mobility scooter, and build your Dalek around it. It is the simplest way to make a Dalek move. The thing with mobility scooter and wheelchair motors is they're a little bit different from traditional motors. Now, this is just a traditional small little 150 watt motor. You notice it's got two wires. It's very, very simple. You simply, if you put your power into your motor turns. If you reverse the current, your motor goes in the opposite direction. Very, very simple. These types of speed controllers require this kind of connection. So it's basically your motor's connected in and it controls it. Now, you might have noticed, the keen-eyed amongst you, that this wheelchair motor has 4 wires. 4 connections, and it has that for a very important reason. And you need to know this if you are going to power your Dalek via this kind of system. If you're just going to connect it up to your mobility scooter controller and this, just connect it up, don't mess with it, just plug it together and it will all work. Now, This little plastic cap on the end of the motor is what we're going to focus on. So I'm going to remove that. You notice there's something underneath here. Now, it's very, very simple to understand this, but it's a little bit more complex to deal with. On a motor, you have a shaft that runs down the centre of the motor. Generally, the shaft protrudes at the top onto a gear, and then that turns. On this motor, the shaft goes into the gearbox, but it also protrudes out of the back of the motor. And on the back of the motor, we have this assembly here. Now, this is actually an electromagnet. What it does, it acts as a brake. Picture this. You've got, on your mobility scooter, you're sat outside the shop, and you're on a particularly steep hill. You get off your mobility scooter or your powered wheelchair, and you go into the shop to buy your newspaper as you watch your mobility scooter go down the hill. Because you don't have a handbrake on a mobility scooter, so you need an electronic brake. So once the power is turned off to these systems, this brake is applied. It locks the motor, it stops the motor, it stops the wheel turning. And it does this electronically via these two extra little wires that are on here. Hence why you need to leave them on if you're going to use this system. You might find this system won't actually work if you cut these wires off. So leave those wires on if you're going to use these systems. If you're going to use a radio control system, you're going to have to get rid of this electromagnet. You're going to have to either physically remove it or bridge these wires. Now, generally, the way it works is that when the power isn't running to the motor, the magnet is locked. It locks the shaft that comes out of the back, so the shaft can't turn. What I suggest you do, and most people do this, is just remove the unit. It's really, really simple. There's a couple of bolts, Allen key heads, just undo them and it just slides off the shaft. Put the cap back on and just ignore the other two wires. And you know which the proper wires are because they're the two real heavy chunky wires, because of course you have a lot of current. As I mentioned, you need a big battery to power these, so of course if you need a big battery you need chunky wires. The two very little thin wires are the ones that go to the electromagnet, which effectively act as the brake. Once you take this off, you simply don't need them. They're redundant. I've been asked, is it important to leave this on? Not really. How do you stop your Dalek rolling down a hill? Well, on the other end of the motor, and most of these motors have them, we have this freewheeling lever. Now what this lever does is, in one position, the motor can just turn freely. We can see there, I can actually turn that quite freely. Let's just pop, whoops, the wheel on. There we go. You can see I can freewheel the wheel because it's in that position. If I lock that upwards, the wheel's locked. I can't turn it. When I apply power to the motor now, the wheel will turn. Obviously, if I don't apply power to the motor, I've got to be able to sort of turn this. Now, generally, the weight of a Dalek, it's not going to roll away. It's going to be all right. Maybe with a person inside, I don't know. Maybe you're getting to that point where it could roll away. Obviously, if you've got sensitive equipment like these connected to these motors, you must use this system. If this is connected to the motor and the motor is engaged and you move the Dalek along, the motor will act like a generator, feeding the current from here back into the speed controller. If your battery is disconnected, that power has nowhere to go and it will destroy your speed controller. So that lever is really important. When you move your Dalek around, turn the lever, the wheel turns, it freewheels, the motor's not operating, it's protecting the speed controller. And that is why that is there, but also it allows you to move the Dalek around in and out of a van or however you transport it. So, electromagnet. I suggest take it off, remove it, do a little bit of research on it if you don't want to, and it's a matter then of just bridging the wires, giving it power, so it thinks it's powered all the time, and it just operates as if it's not there. But if you're not going to use it, why have it? Just remove it because you're carrying extra weight. Now we're going to see another Dalek now. This is going to be Dalek Dillon. And Mark, who we've met Mark before, we featured him on a previous show. And now we're going to go pop over and have a chat with Mark about Dalek Dillon and see how he gets on.
Hello, I'm here with Mark Davenport from m.s.d.Props, and we'd like you to meet the Dalek, in this case, Dillon. Ta-da! So Mark, how did you get into Daleks?
I've always loved the movie Daleks and always fancied one. This one came up for sale and I bought it. He wasn't nothing like this when I bought him.
So you did quite a few modifications.
No, originally he was the black and gold second movie Dalek.
Right, okay.
So,
from the 60s.
So from the 60s, yeah. From the originals.
And then you've obviously changed a load of stuff because I see he's got a bit of a...
Yeah, he's well known for his mohawk.
He's got a mohawk.
Yeah.
And he's got the arm.
Yeah, he got a new arm.
And then all these are clear,
hemis, yeah.
see-through hemispheres. And all them bits of metal on it, kind of in line with a bit of a Mad Maxy feel.
Yeah.
So it's kind of apocalyptic Dalek.
Yes,
Dillon.
yes.
But his
He's been for
name
the war.
Dillon, is that after Magic Roundabout Dillon?
Yes, it's Dillon, Dillon from Magic Roundabout.
And I hear you've owned another Dalek as well.
Yes, I've had 4.
4?
Yes, 4, yeah.
Oh my goodness, so you've pared right down to 1 now.
No, I've got 2 now.
Oh, you got 2?
Yeah, I've
Okay.
sold 2 and...
Oh yeah, wasn't it your Dalek that had the Union Jacks on it?
Yes, he's in the garden. Yes.
He's in the garden.
I painted him ready, especially for Byeeeee Day. I had loads of people come up and take photographs of him.
Oh, that's brilliant. That's a brilliant thing to honour those people.
I had him in the garden, yeah.
Oh, that's really, really cool. Where else would you keep your Dalek but in your garden? Of course. Thanks ever so much for talking to us about Dillon.
Okay, thank you.
So that was Dalek Dillon and Mark from m.s.d.Props. Thanks, Mark. And that show was, which the pictures were from. And that was Dalek Dillon and Mark from m.s.d.Props. Thanks so much, guys, for that interview. It's really, really cool. And the show that some of those pictures were from was Optimus Bristol. A couple of years ago now. It's such a brilliant show. Really, really good show. Anyway, moving on, our next Dalek is Dalek Candi, and this is Shane.
My Dalek's name is Dalek Candi. She was named Candy after her main pink colour, which is Candy Floss Pink. Back in the year 2000, before Doctor Who even returned to our TV screens, I was looking online for a project to work on as a hobby. I initially looked at building an R2-D2, but I quickly learned that it was going to be an expensive project. I then discovered the Dalek Builders Guild, and I became interested in building a Dalek. Whilst reading other people's build diaries and how they were building their own Daleks, I came across a thread made from the Make-A-Wish Foundation, where a young boy's dying wish wanted to see a full-size Dalek. It was a very moving thread to follow. Sadly, the young boy's health took a turn for the worse, and he passed away before he got to meet the Dalek. It was at that moment that I decided I would build my own Dalek, and I would use it to raise money for charity. My Dalek is built with a mixture of materials. The dome and the skirts are made from fiberglass, the neck rings are made from MDF, the fender at the base is made from plywood. The hemispheres around the skirt are made from Christmas tree baubles. The shoulders are rather different in construction. I created the shoulders by opening a 3D model in a program called Peppercora. This program changes any 3D image into a papercraft model. You can then print out that onto card, cut it out, and then glue it all together to recreate that 3D model in papercraft art. I then fiberglassed the inside to give the model some strength, and then I used carb body filler on the outside to smooth out all of the shape. Dalek Candi took 3 years to build and was completed in August 2012. However, I did rush her build to meet a deadline for a specific event, so her shoulder section ended up not meeting the design of her original concept. Unhappy with this, I retired Candy when my youngest daughter was born in July 2014, so I could refurbish Candy. With a newborn baby around though, time and spare finances delayed Candy's reconstruction for a further 4 years, and her reconstruction wasn't completed until August 2018, now with Mechmaster shoulders as per her original design. I've taken Dalek Candi to many great events, but I think I'd have to say it would have to be the Fleet Air Arm Museum. Firstly, it was the first ever big Dalek event that I was ever introduced to, and secondly, it also happens to be the first event that I ever took Dalek Candi to, and that was 8 years ago now. I was pretty nervous about how the public was going to react to Candi, but she was instantly loved, and that love has grown ever since. Every single time she does an event, she seems to have gathered a fan base that seems to grow every time she's out.
Thanks so much, Shane and Dalek Candi. That was absolutely brilliant. And we are on the third one of our Dalek Obsession videos. So next week is the fourth. It's the last one. In the meantime, please can you just all go and have a little look at our Patreon account, because it only costs from £2 a month to support us. And we know there won't be any more shows now until Christmas due to social distancing. So that little bit of income we get from Patreon really helps us keep going, and it helps us make loads of weird and wacky things. So have a little quick look at it and see what you could think. Maybe it will make someone you know a really good Christmas present. And you do get early access to our videos. In the meantime, we're going to leave you now because we need to come back next week for the fourth episode of the Dalek Obsession. Don't forget to subscribe and exterminate! Hit the bell. Bye!